This is absolutely wild, and I need every Cowboys fan to hear what just went down, because Christian Parker didn't just sign with Dallas. He made a statement that has the entire league talking, and trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for this one, because the ending is what nobody saw coming. And before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because here at Cowboys Live News, we break down every single update the moment it happens, and you don't want to miss what's coming next for this team. So here's the situation. Christian Parker walks into the Cowboys facility for his introductory presser, and everyone's expecting the usual stuff, right? The generic quotes about being grateful, the praise for the organization, the safe answers that every new signing gives, but that's not what happened, not even close. Parker looked at those reporters and said something that instantly changed the entire vibe of this offseason. He said he didn't come to Dallas to admire the past, he came to change the present, and when those words left his mouth, you could literally feel the temperature in that room shift. Think about what that means for a second. He's essentially saying the Cowboys, as currently constructed, need to change something. And when you say that about America's team, when you say that about a franchise with 5 Super Bowl trophies and more national spotlight than any team in professional sports, you better be ready for the consequences. But here's what's crazy. Parker didn't back down. He leaned into it even harder. He started talking about how talent without results means nothing to him, how hype without hardware doesn't motivate him, how potential without proof doesn't impress him. And at this point, I'm watching this press conference thinking, okay, this guy is different. This isn't the typical new player trying to fit in and stay quiet. This is a man on a mission. And then he dropped the line that broke the internet. He said, quote, "I'm not here to participate in expectations. I'm here to exceed them." And Cowboys Twitter absolutely lost its mind, because we all know what exceeding expectations means in Dallas. It doesn't mean 10 wins. It doesn't mean a wild card berth. It doesn't mean a divisional round appearance. It means deep January football. It means conference championship games. It means Super Bowl contention. That's the bar, and Parker just publicly acknowledged it. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, cool, he talks a big game, but can he back it up? And that's a fair question, but here's what nobody is talking about. It's not just what he said, it's how he said it. When a reporter asked him if he felt pressure joining such a high-profile franchise, Parker's response was legitimately chilling. He said pressure is a privilege. He said if you're not feeling pressure, you're probably not chasing anything meaningful, and I don't know about you, but that mentality is exactly what this team has been missing for years. Think about all the times we've watched the Cowboys crumble in big moments. Think about all the primetime games where they looked unprepared. Think about the playoff losses where the pressure seemed to suffocate them. And now you have a guy walking in saying he feeds off that pressure, saying he wants the lights, wants the scrutiny, wants the responsibility. That's a completely different energy. But wait, it gets even more interesting, because when reporters tried to shift the conversation toward his personal stats and individual goals, Parker kept redirecting everything back to team success. He said, individual stats are empty if the team isn't still playing when it matters most. And in today's NFL, where so many players are focused on their brand and their numbers and their highlight reels, hearing someone prioritize championships over personal accolades is genuinely refreshing. So at this point, the press conference is already generating headlines everywhere, but then came the moment that truly shocked everyone. A reporter asked Parker what would define a successful first season for him in Dallas. And most players in that situation give you some safe answer about building chemistry or learning the system or taking it one game at a time. But Parker didn't do any of that. He looked directly at the camera and said anything short of a deep playoff run would be unacceptable. And I need you to really process that word, unacceptable. That's not hope. That's not optimism. That's a standard. That's a baseline. That's a demand. He basically told the entire football world that he's not coming to Dallas to rebuild or develop or lay a foundation. He's coming to win right now. And if that doesn't happen, he's going to view it as a failure. Now, I know some people are going to say he's setting himself up for criticism if things go wrong. And yeah, that's true. But here's my take. Would you rather have a player who hedges his bets and protects himself from accountability, or a player who puts it all on the line and says, this is what I expect from myself and everyone around me, because I'll take the second guy every single time? And Parker addressed that exact point. He said accountability is what sharpens teams. He said it forces preparation to elevate, forces communication to improve, forces leadership to lead. And those aren't just empty words. That's a philosophy. That's a culture statement. That's someone trying to raise the standard for an entire organization. Now let's talk about what this means for the locker room, because this is where things get really interesting. The Cowboys already have established veterans, they have respected voices, they have defined leadership structures, and when a new guy comes in talking like this, it inevitably creates a dynamic shift. Some players are going to hear those comments and feel energized. They're going to think, finally someone is saying what we've all been thinking. But other players might feel challenged. They might wonder if Parker is indirectly calling them out for past failures. And that tension can go one of two ways. It can either galvanize a team or fracture it. And how the Cowboys navigate that is going to be fascinating to watch. But here's what I think is actually happening. I think Parker knew exactly what he was doing. I think he understood that his words would spread through that locker room within hours. I think he wanted his new teammates to hear that message. And I think he's betting that the competitors on this roster will embrace that challenge rather than resent it. Because let's be real, if you're a player who gets offended by someone saying we need to win a championship or that falling short is unacceptable, then maybe you're not built for this stage anyway. Parker also made some subtle comments that really stood out to me. He said being competitive isn't the same as being dominant when it counts. And man, that hit different, because that's exactly what Cowboys fans have been screaming for years. We've been competitive, we've been talented, we've had the playmakers and the star power and the national coverage, but when January arrives and the margin for error disappears, something always seems to go wrong, and Parker essentially acknowledged that pattern while simultaneously saying he refuses to accept it as normal. He talked about how preparation in the offseason has to translate into execution in elimination games. And that distinction is so important because a lot of teams can win in September and October when the pressure is lower. But sustaining that momentum into the playoffs when every possession matters and every mistake is magnified, that's a completely different challenge. And Parker seems to understand that on a deep level. So what does all this mean for the Cowboys going forward? Well, first of all, the storyline is already written. Every single thing Christian Parker does from this point forward is going to be viewed through the lens of those comments. Every practice rep, every preseason snap, every regular season performance, it's all going to be measured against the standard he set in that press conference. If he dominates, people are going to say he backed it up. If he struggles, people are going to call him all talk. That's the double-edged sword of speaking boldly, and Parker seems completely comfortable wielding it. He actually said he would rather set the bar high and risk criticism than set it low and guarantee mediocrity. And that philosophy right there is the difference between good players and great players. Elite competitors operate with internal standards way higher than public expectations. Parker just chose to share his internal standard out loud. And honestly, I think Cowboys fans needed to hear this. We've been through so many off seasons where we get our hopes up only to watch the team fall short when it matters. We've defended this franchise against national media members who love to clown us. We've sat through all the "this is the year" narratives that never materialized. And now we have a player openly saying that early playoff exits aren't acceptable stepping stones. They're failures that need to be corrected immediately. That's not corporate speak, that's genuine competitive fire. And this is important, determination alone doesn't guarantee success, execution does. And Parker acknowledged that too. He said talking is easy in the offseason. He said the real test comes when momentum swings against you, when hostile crowds are roaring, when injuries test your depth, when pressure peaks in prime time. He said that's when standards either collapse or crystallize. And the fact that he understands that nuance makes me even more confident that this isn't just bravado. This is a man who has thought deeply about what winning requires. From a bigger picture perspective, Parker's approach also reflects a shift in how athletes handle media narratives. Players today are more willing to control the conversation rather than avoid it. They recognize that staying quiet doesn't protect you from criticism, only performance does. So by speaking boldly, Parker positioned himself as proactive. He's defining expectations now rather than waiting to see how things unfold and reacting later. And that kind of mentality can be contagious in a locker room if enough players buy in. He kept coming back to this idea of comfort being dangerous. He said, comfort leads to stagnation, urgency fuels growth, and if you think about the most successful organizations in sports or business, they almost never settle for incremental improvement when transformative progress is possible. Parker's words suggest he sees Dallas not as a team that needs to rebuild slowly, but as a contender ready to break through right now, and if that belief spreads through the building, it could fundamentally change how this team prepares and competes. Now, I want want to know what you think. Is Christian Parker exactly what this team needed, or is he creating unrealistic expectations that could backfire? Drop your take in the comments, because I read all of them and I want to hear from the Cowboys Nation on this one. Here's my final take. Whether you love what Parker said or think he's putting too much pressure on himself, you have to admit this was one of the most compelling introductory press conferences we've seen from a Cowboys player in years. He didn't blend in, he didn't play it safe, he stepped into one of the brightest spotlights in professional sports and declared that he expects more from himself, from his teammates, and from this entire franchise. That takes guts, and in a league where so many players give rehearsed answers and avoid controversy, it's refreshing to see someone speak with genuine conviction. The season hasn't started yet, so we don't know how this story ends, but one thing is absolutely certain: Christian Parker has transformed what could have been a forgettable offseason signing into a defining moment that's going to be talked about all year long. If you're as hyped about this Cowboys season as I am, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the updates, because trust me, there's going to be a lot more to talk about as we get closer to kickoff. And until next time, let's go Cowboys!